park entrance. We've got a trail crossing sign on one side of Horseman's and a trail crossing and park entrance side on the other side. And I think we could do a park entrance sign to match the park entrance sign and a trail crossing sign with the arrows to point to where they actually are so that people understand where those trails are. Rather than if you go further, I'm gonna call it east, south and east. We've got a trail crossing sign in between two trail crossings currently, out by where Agans live. You can spread them out, do the same kind of thing, trail crossing, warning sign, 35 miles an hour, right? Essentially, to me, the goal was to bring traffic speeds around Horseman's Park down to 25, which I think is halfway in between, it's not halfway in between 15 and 45, but from a traffic standpoint of not slowing way down to 15 miles an hour and having somebody get rear-ended that's coming around the corner. But to slow them down to 25 around Horseman's, slow them down within essentially that whole trail crossing corridor from one end to the other to a maximum of 35 using warning signs, using curb signs, all of those speed limit advisories. And then from that point on, essentially Tower Road East, 45. We've already got the hard 90 warnings at the corner where Jeff Christensen lives. Those are already posted. Anything past that point to the east is flat, generally open, and to me no different than any other 45-mile-an-hour posted road in the community.
So basically you're wanting to just simply eliminate the 15 and go ahead with the advisory and so on and so forth. Was that something?
That's my opinion. There's obviously two others to go with it.
So are we gonna make a recommendation tonight and take action on it, or do you wanna put this in a more of a clear recommendation for the next meeting?
If there's 2/3 buy-in at this point, I think making this a little more clear than what it is would be beneficial, and at the same point, at some point, if this approach were to get taken, we would have to rescind the ordinance that's in place for the 15 miles an hour. So regardless of what happens tonight, there's a secondary action that has to happen, which is rescinding the ordinance that was passed for 15.
I mean, I think your suggestion is a better solution than we have today out there. And then do we just keep, take some action tonight and then keep looking at it, keep trying to improve it? But I think your suggestion that everything you laid out makes sense to me.
I'm behind you 100%. But you gotta put it in a motion.
All right. I would make a motion that, number one, we try to get pricing for the advisory signage, just so that we know, because this is gonna come up later. Get pricing for the advisory signage as presented in the map exhibit, and to work with the town attorney to rescind the ordinance for the 15-mile-an-hour zone.
But not change any of the signs?
At this point, it's legally 15, and until we rescind the ordinance, it's still legally 15.
No, we didn't have.
Yes, but the other things you're talking about.
I think it would be important to know what we're in for as far as the cost to repost all of it.
I don't think there's gonna be a huge cost. You got the posts out there. The trail crossing signs are paid for. He gets most of those signs for 28 to 35 bucks. There's 4,000 or more in the sign budget. Okay, well, I bought some signs, but I think we ought to move forward with it. I don't think that we have to call the lawyer for this when the previous board made the.
Yeah, I've never, as I've been clerk treasurer, we've never rescinded an ordinance, so I have to look at what that process entails. I don't It's just that we write up some new verbiage around the old one, so.
Can I say something? Just as a former board member, you can rescind an ordinance, but you would have to have that on the agenda, so you can't rescind it tonight.
Well,
So
that's-
Jeff is absolutely right in saying, he's laid out what he wants, but you probably should do it all at another meeting. Rescind this ordinance at the same time, you know, the 15-mile-an-hour ordinance, because you have to have that on the agenda to rescind it, and it's not on the agenda tonight.
Right.
I agree, so let's put that on for the next meeting. We'll write all this up where you want the signs and everything.
I mean, at the same point, we can pass it along to Tyson too, if he wants to take my map and go through it and see if he has a different recommendation or a different whatever. My, above and beyond halfway in between of this was to, number one, I knew we had those 10 recreational trail crossing signs. Number two, aside from pulling posts out and maybe putting those same posts in a different location, I don't think there is a huge cost behind this either. However, when we get to whatever number it is down here, there's gonna be a discussion on where are we gonna pay for the rest of what's not in the budget for this year. And signage is signage, signage is mowing, signage is snow plowing, signage is road construction, signage, I mean, so, you know, we got a pot and we have to play with it, but, so let me re-clarify my motion. My motion would be to, talk with the county about this signage plan and work with the town clerk to notice at the next meeting rescinding the ordinance for the 15-mile-an-hour zone.
Just made a motion, is there a second? Okay, motion's been made to work with the county sign man, Tyson Barnes, on putting the necessary signage up on Little Prairie Road, between the village and Tower Road. And see what that cost is, and to rescind the current 15-mile-an-hour ordinance for the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I do have a secondary motion. I would also make a motion that the town of Palmyra formally request the village of Palmyra to move their 25-mile-an-hour speed limit to the village and town boundary, on Little Prairie Road. And I will more than willingly
Take care of that.
be the lamb in the slaughter on that one.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
to repeat the motion.
Okay. A motion's been made. Josh will speak to the village clerk's office, village president, whoever it is, to reduce their speed limit to 25 coming into the village off of Little Prairie. It's already 25 miles an hour. To the limit.
Correct, it is, yes.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and possible action to move from a 3-member board to a 5-member board.
So what I found is, there were several questions at the last board meeting about what would happen around making that move. One question was if the new board members would be at large, or if they would be just, could be set for a certain area or ward within the town, and they're at large. It's for the whole town. You can't set a area that a new board member would be. If we have 2 new board members and we end up with only 1 board member being voted in next spring, that means we would have an empty seat. The current board members would nominate someone to fill that position. And then if there is more than 1 person nominated for that position, then the board and the clerk would be able to vote on who would fill that position. The new board members would take their seats the 3rd Tuesday of April, just like the board members here they took theirs this year when they were voted in. And then for the new board members, their salaries would have to be set in the fall elector meeting, which is really around the budget meeting that we have. So those are the steps that we would have to do. Since we've gone from a caucus to a primary, those folks would have to file the papers for the primary rather than a caucus process. So, that's what I found out.
What did we do at the first meeting? What was the resolution, what did we do as far as we voted to move forward with?
Well, I think what it was is, it was to have a ordinance to move from 3-member to a 5-member, but then also to find out the answers to those questions that people also had around that whole process. So knowing all of that, do you still want to go from a 3-member to a 5-member board? And then we would have to have the ordinance noted on whatever meeting it is that you want to move forward with that on.
Well, a couple questions first. What's the time? As far as
Timing for,
when would nomination, when would the election be, when would the nomination?
well,
thing
right
come?
now there's only 3 elections next year. They're not counting on having a primary in February. I think there will be for any other seats that are out there. And especially if you get more than one person nominated for each of the positions, you'll have to have a primary. I don't know when the folks would have to fill or file their nomination papers. I think it's sometime around November, maybe, something like that. But definitely for that date, whatever it is, they will have to know what their salaries are. And that's why you would set it in October, early November, somewhere around there.
But as we talked about in an earlier meeting, this is a process that we have to be going now in order to have the 2 positions up for ballot
Right,
early next year.
right, because if you wait until next year to do it, then you're in a whole nother world of how do you get the seats to be, you know, the chair in 1 and 2 will stay on the odd year, and then the 4 and 5, or 3 and 4 will be on an even year. If you don't do it now, you're gonna really get it
So
complicated.
assuming we want to move forward with this, just assuming for a minute, there is some urgency to move forward with it and get things in place to make it happen in early 2020.
And to make it real smooth,
Right.
yes.
In talking with the town association, did they allude to the fact that they may have a draft ordinance for this type of thing?
I've already got one written,
Okay,
so I'm just waiting for you guys to decide what meeting you want to have it officially noted for.
okay.
You have to be specific about which positions are up in which years, like odd, even, and all that, yeah. So I think I got it all written up, ready to go.
I'll make a motion that we continue the process to move forward from a 3 to a 5-person board and have this put on the agenda for the next meeting so we can keep this moving forward.
The motion's been made to continue with the process of going to a 5-person board and put the ordinance on the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, new business. Discussion and possible action on the request by Penny Cherico to rezone approximately 4 acres of PIN 0214-0516-3421-00 from A3 agricultural rural residential to R2 residential near W1275 South Shore Drive.
And you should have got the packet on that with the information that they're looking for.
the, correct forms and everything back?
This,
I was gonna say, we did get a letter, from Jeff and Stacy Massey.
I'm also here.
Okay. To whom it may concern, we are writing in support of our neighbor Penny, and, I'm sorry, how do you say her last name?
Sergio.
Sergio?
Sergio.
Sergio. Pending zoning and variance applications, which he has filed to enable himself 4-acre parcel of land. We own and live full-time on the 25 acres of land, 024-0516-3421-006, that sits to the east of Penny's property. We also share a driveway with Penny via the easement that has been in place since 1984. We have been Penny's neighbors since moving to the area 3 years ago and are committed to maintaining the harmonious relationship we share. We are very much in favor of her being able to maintain a residence on the land she has lived on for so many years. We are confident that Penny's applications will not interfere or detract from our property or the neighborhood at large, but rather ensure continued responsible stewardship of the land in our community. Thank you, Jeffrey and Stacy Manson.
Thank you for that letter.
Yeah.
I reached out to the Lake District Board just to see if they had any input or thoughts on this, and I did not receive any feedback, so nothing negative or anything came back from the Lake Board.
On my end, I looked into it, realistically, I mean, the land has, in my own opinion, from looking at historic aerials, has not really been A3 agricultural use. R2 compared to R1 is sewered versus unsewered. I checked to see if this was in the Blue Spring Lake Management District service area for sanitary sewer, and it's not, so to me, it seems as though it's checked the boxes.
I make a motion that we approve the, the rezoning and variance applications.
Well, you have to do the rezoning first, and then we have a second for the variance.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to accept the rezone for Penny Chirico.
Sergio.
Rezone approximately 4 acres of PIN 0214-0516-3421-000 from A3 agricultural rural residential to R2 residential near W1275 South Shore Drive. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? 2, discussion and possible action on the request by Penny for a variance to allow for a reduction of the minimum lot frontage required on a public road as a result of the rezone request in agenda item 1.
I've got one question on this, looking at the existing, or what would be the remnant, lot frontage versus the remaining lot 1, residential parcel. Understanding that the 30-foot wide, driveway easement is there, it seems like there's enough frontage with the 125 feet of frontage to the lot, the 4-acre lot, that they could meet the 66 foot or 60 or 66 foot minimum for both of those lots and not need a variance, but maybe
How much fun?
oh, you are here.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I got an aerial here, if I can find it, that shows the problem, no matter what we get skin the cat.
Okay.
Was that thing that you gave to them, or?
No, I got a different one here that it didn't include. I think it's this one. Sneak through here. Here's the other aerial. It is completely 66 foot. It's 20 here, I think it's 66 foot. It's 66 foot to come all the way up.
Okay.
So then I'm probably 32 feet here. Where that goofy lot.
It has to be not only frontage, but a continued corridor.
Right.
Okay. Answers my question.
Yeah. Okay.
Appreciate it.
There.
What's the actual width that they're wanting it to be?
30.
30.
My question was whether or not, because of there's that barn that's there, my assumption is that they could flare this out, keep 60 or whatever it was here, 66 feet, and then have whatever needed here, but Mr. Kennard said that it's gotta be a corridor all the way back to the road of the parcel, which makes sense. So with that, I would make a, recommendation that the variance to allow the minimum lot frontage required for public road access as a result of the rezone of parcel 02140516 342100 be approved.
Motion's been made to approve the request by Penny Jericho for the variance to allow for the reduction of the minimum lot frontage required on a public road as a result of the rezone requested in agenda item 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 3, discussion and possible action on variance, conditional use, rezone form used to notify neighbors within a quarter mile. Okay, this was brought up because of this nice lady that we just approved everything on. John brought this to my attention. To actually do this, she would have had to go a quarter mile down the road and get approval from everybody and get signatures or whatever to get this done.
A quarter mile each way or an eighth of a mile each way for a total of a quarter?
Take the line. Any,
An eighth each way, so a total of a quarter.
So I was advised by,
No, it says within a quarter of a mile, so it's a half-mile radius, or a half mile all the way across. It says notify all property owners within a quarter mile, so it could be a quarter mile west or a quarter mile east, that's a half mile across, that's gigantic.
That's it, yeah, if that's the case, that's a large, yes.
can you imagine her having to do that for us? I'm gonna ask John, what's done in other jurisdictions?
Palmyra is the only township I know that has a form like that, and I work all the way through Jefferson County, and I'm not aware of any other. I'm on the town board of Town of Sullivan, and we post our notices, and it's up to the citizens to pay attention. I guess the county at the public hearing for a rezone, the county does send out notices to at least to the adjacent neighbors. They used to have that mileage thing on their forms years ago, but they reduced that because just, when you get to the lakes, pretty soon you're sending out hundreds of notices.
Right.
And it was just too big of a staff load for, all of the lakes. You get those little lots, so then they want to just adjacent neighbors is what the county does.
So the county sends them out anyway?
Well, they do on a rezone, yeah, on this rezone, the neighbors will get a notice of a public hearing from the county when it comes to the county for a public hearing, like for the county process.
I think they also do it for conditional use permits, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so essentially any legally or non-legal conforming use, the county's gonna notify adjacent residents of business at the county.
Anyway.
So do we want to amend this to just say adjacent neighbors, or do we want to eliminate it altogether? I mean, there's such a difference between, it's out, how do I wanna say this, if there's farmland, then you probably have one neighbor anyway, right? One on each side, maybe across the street. When you get out towards the lake and other places like that, like we said, there's, could be a bunch of them. And if it's already being taken, if the county's already taken care of it, I'd probably say, do we even need it?
Make a motion.
You guys' input first. I guess we'll get your input when I make the motion. I make the motion to eliminate the document.
Motion's been made to eliminate the
You think?
document that was used to rezone, or that has to be filled out when somebody is rezoning. Is Is there a second?
Can I pause you for a second and
Yes.
ask a
Any
question?
more discussion? Go ahead.
Do we still need the document, just to eliminate that requirement? Because do they have to notify us with the form? Because they still have to apply for the rezoning or whatever, correct?
Right, they go to the county
There's-
first.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
the
the
county
county.
sends
To you
emails
guys.
to Laura, the clerk.
Yep.
Yeah, we get those.
All right, then the motion stands.
Okay, there's, again, one more time, there has been a motion to eliminate this form completely as far as rezones that the Palmyra Town Board has been using in the past.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Efficiency of government.
Number 4, discussion and possible action on rekeying town hall. I had that put on there. Dick looked and looked and looked and he could not find his key for the town hall. We've got a problem with the front door, the lock doesn't work
They're
anymore.
talking about
We can either have the whole thing redone,
and that yard.
rekeyed, the front lock is not good, the door handle lock, the deadbolt's fine.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good evening.
Thank you, I'm still drinking. I don't know what
Or
I've done.
just replace the key and fix the lock.
Well, there's a question on the key that says do not duplicate, right?
Correct, but the, what do you call them, key,
Locksmith.
locksmith can do that.
Have anybody looked into the cost difference between redoing it and just fixing it and making the key, is it substantial?
You know, did you look into anything on it?
So I've got a kind of a down home solution to this.
Okay, go ahead.
I've got a deadbolt and entry lock set at my house from pre-renovation that we can, it doesn't say do not duplicate, it's just a schlag lock set, but for the interim period. I mean, we get rid of the issue of essentially the town hall being potentially unlocked by someone not.
That's true, but he's still gotta get in here.
Right, we can get the keys copied.
Okay, for the front door.
Right.
Well, if you wanna donate that,
Yeah, I was
The
gonna
back
say,
door's
back
also
door
a key.
advances that, yeah.
Alright. Also much for being, it
I'm trying to help.
was worth a shot.
I think you oughta just, I think what you oughta do, Laura, is, see what it costs to rekey the whole thing, and put 2 new locks on the front door and the back, the whole thing, because the front one is bad.
Okay.
Find that out, we'll table this until, whatever the most cost effective way.
I make a motion to table this, that may not be the right term, but table this till the July meeting while we work on the cost side of things.
Okay, a motion's been made to table this till next meeting, is there a second?
There is a follow-up. Regardless of how many deadbolts it is, I think we need to lock this building, period. Because it is what it is, so by all means necessary, and also see if there's a second deadbolt, even if it's not a door lock or whatever, to make sure that essentially Laura's got keys in this building and that's it, if need be, and go from there. And with that, I'll second Rob's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Discussion and possible action to approve Class A liquor license for Heidi's Hobbies, Heidi Brewster.
One before we skip one.
Oops, sorry, backing up. Discussion and possible action to approve Class B liquor and Class B beer license for Rushing Waters Trout Farm, Peter Frisch.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the Class B liquor and Class B beer license for Rushing Water Trout Farm. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now number 6, discussion and possible action to approve Class A liquor license for Heidi's Hobbies, Heidi Duster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Class A liquor license for Heidi's Hobbies. Heidi Brewster, all in favor?
Aye.
Discussion of possible action to approve Class A liquor license for Circle K Campground and Beyond.
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made to approve the Class A liquor license for Circle K Campground, and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Discussion and possible action to approve operator's license for Nicole Abbott, Pete Murphy, Wendy Miller, and Katie Gray.
Before you make a motion, I have not received applications or fees yet, so whoever's going to make the motion should make it dependent on receiving the applications, the fees, and then clearing any search that I do on their name for any criminal issues.
And operator license, we're talking bartender
Bartender.
license?
Yeah.
Was there not also an additional list, or is this the list for rushing waters?
This is the list they gave
It
me.
was? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought there was additional.
No, no, this is it.
Who do you go through for backup? Do you?
I can't remember the site, but there's a couple
CCAP?
sites, yeah, that I go to on it. And the thing is, the criminal activity has to be specific to alcohol. Yeah.
I make a motion, you move forward with approval with the caveat that you've got to do your background checks.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve the licenses for Nicole Abbott, Pete Murphy, Wendy Roder, Katie Gray, after they're paid for, pass the background check, and fill out the application. Is that what you said?
All three.
A second?
Was that you second, or is there a second?
Is there a second?
Yes, there is. I second that.
Why? Very good. Okay. This is starting to be difficult for you.
Stop and take.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Discussion and possible action to accept a surety bond instead of an escrow fund deposit for any entity that is applying for a right-of-way work permit on town of Palmyra roads.
Does that serve the same purpose? I know we don't get the actual funds put in the account, but does it serve the same purpose?
It's supposed to, is what, was it chartered? Spectrum, yeah. So that it would, you would just have to apply to them to get the cash rather than holding the cash because you already have it.
I would make a motion that we deny the use of a surety bond.
I'm gonna second that.
The rationale behind that is that the proposed bond that we got expired in 30 days, and I know there's no way that they're gonna get the work done and have us be able to review it within 30 days, which just makes more administrative work on your end, our end, whatever it is. We have to be named as an additional, each one of these bonds is gonna be created by a different surety company, and it's just gonna turn in, it's way easier to get a check deposited and send a refund back to them than it is to go through
Yes.
all that and
And
double
there's-
check which ones are whose,
And
because.
there's potential, a lot of downstream work on our part,
Correct.
so.
Okay, a motion has been made to not accept a surety bond instead of an escrow fund deposit for any entity that is applying for the right-of-way work permit on the town of Palmyra roads. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 10. Discussion and possible action on road maintenance on South Shore Drive and Blue Spring Lake Drive.
Yes, I asked for this agenda item to make sure that, to your point before, that both these roads are in the 5-year plan that's being developed, so that they are maintained before they completely, like some other roads we have, just make sure it's in the 5-year plan. Was there any specific area that you wanted to reference?
Chris?
Oh, just the whole road, like from H all the way to the T. It's so dangerous, like there's ruts, It's bad. I mean, it needs like 5 years. It needs now.
It doesn't mean the 5th year, it just means
Right.
in there, and we'll,
Like, it's been bad probably for the last, probably 10 years that we've been there.
I agree.
I would,
So sooner the better.
I would add the culvert there too, that's right there actually in front of my house. If-
Yep.
When the culvert was destructed this, past winter, February, March timeframe, it just became a big pool, and the county came in and fixed it.
that's not the one we just replaced.
Yeah, that's the one that just got replaced, but make that as part of the 5-year plan, that it's maintained.
It's not the one on Shore Drive, it's
South Shore Drive.
that one. What happened with it?
Before they fixed it is when it collapsed and there was just a huge.
I've seen it flood where it
Flood,
goes
right.
over into that guy's house.
Right.
It was so high, the water.
Right,
Oh my God.
but the county fixed it, or somebody fixed it.
It will be a consistent request that both those roads are high in the priority list.
Okay.
Josh?
Yeah, as far as, there's technically with our Whistler segments, there's 3 different sections of the road. There's North Blue Spring Lake Drive, which goes, actually there's 4 now that I think about it. There's North Blue Spring Lake Drive from the Y out to the old daycare, Battle Creek. There's South Shore Drive from the Y all the way out and around, back out to Highway H. There's North Blue Spring Lake Drive 1, which goes from the Y out past the Villages Park, out to H that direction. And then there's Town Road number 8, which is the little piece in between the 2 forks of the Y. Going back to our highway committee meeting, some of the information that Ed Miller passed along is that South Shore Drive and North Blue Spring Lake Drive, so essentially the top and bottom of the lake circle, was chip sealed in 2014. North Blue Spring Lake Drive from the Y out to Highway H obviously is one of the worst sections around the lake. That right of way is also split between the village and the town, so not that there's a hurdle, but there is definitely some cooperation that would have to happen as far as an overlay, mill and overlay. There's sections of that road that realistically you can't overlay and they need to be reconstructed. So going down into the list further on the agenda here as far as appropriating funds for road construction, our biggest thing right now is that 2023 has a 0 in the road construction budget. So 0 is a hurdle to get over for road construction. Is something that we're gonna have to work on, not only as a board, but as a highway committee, and definitely with residents as we work through the budget, but duly noted.
So you know it's that bad though. I mean, you've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance to discourage dumping at Blue Spring Lake yard waste site by non-residents of Blue Spring Lake.
Is this a ordinance that the town would or the Lake District
Well,
board?
well, somebody, it'd probably have to go through the town. It would have to go through the town. Now, our deputy sheriff, this is one thing I was hoping to ask him about tonight. Enforcement of that ordinance. He's not here, he or she. I think we should just table this because we're gonna have to find out if it's even gonna get enforced.
Well, I talked to the WTA and they said the first thing that should be done is the entity that it's in should try with signage, with things that they can do,
I believe
because
there's
it's,
signage already there.
right. So then if the town puts in an ordinance, the first question is enforcement, because if you put something in and you're not gonna enforce it, and then it's continued to be done what's happening now, then folks are gonna come to you and say, why are you not enforcing it? You could be setting yourself up for legal issues in the future. So before you make this ordinance, you have to make sure that it's enforceable. So you're gonna have somebody out there, you're gonna put cameras out there, you know, what are you going to do? Because otherwise then if you put it in place and you don't enforce it, you're opening yourself up for issues in the future. It's just who's on both sides.
Yeah, would we also have to determine penalties, or how would that be? So would that be part of the ordinance?
So,
This definitely needs cooperation with the Lake District to be able to, because if it's an unmanned site, it's no different than somebody throwing a TV in my front yard. But, I mean, it's illegal to throw litter at the roadside, so there's gotta be some expectation of, or service level with the Lake District as far as, is it gonna be manned, is it gonna be open? Are they gonna put a game trail camera, whatever it is, to be able to facilitate the enforcement, because I don't think it's the town's responsibility to employ someone to sit there, to man it, to be able to enforce it at some point.
Go ahead, Jim.
When I was on the Blue Spring Lake Management Board, I was in charge of that compost site. And we bought 2 cameras to make sure that we could know who's going in and out, get a license plate number, and a description of the vehicle. That information could not be used because without an ordinance, you could not go to a police officer and find out who it was. Now, I was able to do it because I knew people that were in that business. But it technically is illegal to do that. So, and I'm just laying all the cards on the table. Without that ordinance, there is nothing there that can be enforced. I was told by Hockman, who runs the Blue Spring Lake Management District, that that ordinance had to come from the town. This is the town, and he said it was up to you to do it. And it could be enforced then because you'll have information and you can give it to a local police person and set your penalties.
so, sorry, when I moved here 3 years ago, I shared a property line with them. I had no idea that I couldn't dump there. So yes, there's one big sign at the entrance, but my understanding, everybody that's not on the lakeside doesn't have permission to dump there, and I don't think people know that. To me, it was there so I could dump there.
Jim, the B-lots aren't included
No.
in there?
Pardon?
The B-lots are not included in using the.
They're all included.
No.
A's and B's are both
We
included.
were specific, the person that maintains it right now specifically came to our door and said that we were not allowed to dump there. Because B-side
Who is
lots,
that person?
I don't know.
Male or female?
He does the weed stuff too in the
Dick
lakes.
Roloff.
Yeah.
He knows that very well, that can be enforced if
The
you
B-lots
get an
are part of the Lake
ordinance.
District, so
It's all
Right.
part of
they're
it.
absolutely able to use it.
Okay.
Okay,
What they're trying to eliminate by having the sign in the first place is because contractors are doing work around the lake and not even on the lake, not even lake residents. And they will come in and dump. And it could be anything from concrete blocks to all sorts of crap. And then the Lake District has to pay to have somebody come in, bring a roll-off to get rid of it. That was the biggest problem they had.
Thank you.
Laura, are there sample ordinances or that we can look up to?
Well, I didn't get that far because she said you're gonna open yourself up for legal issues if you're not gonna enforce it, so that would be the next step. If you believe you can enforce it, and then we can look at what samples they have out there.
so why don't you look for the sample ordinances? I'll make a trip up to the sheriff's office and talk to him. How can this be enforced before we go any further? Something needs to be done, there's no doubt about that.
Well, I mean, if we have cameras up there, and even if nobody's sitting there, you know, if the cameras get checked every couple of weeks or whatever time frame, we have a license plate in the vehicle, and if we have an ordinance, we can go to the sheriff or the local police or wherever, and
Well,
find out who it is and send them a ticket or something.
they will send it to me.
Dick Roloff normally knows who's dumping there, and he usually can do something about it. What we used to do, both of us, if we were there, because I lived next door, I used to walk in and say, "Are you a resident? Show me your driver's license. And if they don't show it, please go home." And that was the end of it. They didn't need a ticket, they didn't need a cop, they just realized they got caught cheating.
But times are changing.
I know.
So you'll do that, I'll check with the sheriff.
Can we just triple check that there's not an ordinance that exists already?
I'll come up here and look, believe it or not, I've been sitting up here looking.
I will quote Hockman, who's the head guy for the Blue Spring Lake. He told me there is no ordinance. I asked him to get one, and he refused, never did a thing.
So on that 4 foot by 4 foot sign, when you come off of Highway H on North Blue Spring, or on Blue Spring Lake Drive, not North Blue Spring Lake Drive, I'm 85% confident there's an ordinance number at the bottom of that sign.
Yes.
I don't know specific to what
It is,
rule it's pertaining to, but that may be a starting point on the.
It is on the bottom of the sign, he's correct.
okay, so we'll just move this to the next meeting. I'll
You may
check that ordinance out there on the sign, folks.
No, that was one of the.
You'll do what you have to do, and
Thanks,
I'll
Jim.
check with the sheriff's
I'm gonna
office.
tell Dick next time.
Good enough?
We need a motion to
I don't think so.
table it till next.
What do you think?
Motion to table it to the July meeting.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to table this, item number 11, reference the dumping issue, item number 11, till next meeting. All in favor?
Work between now and then.
With certain things checked on by the clerk and board members.